Starting mute just for 1 second. Alrighty, gang. I have returned. And we're going to pick up this freaking book again. Even though it's probably a little bit, no, it definitely is less exciting than, what is it? Less eventful than Normal People, but we got to finish what we started. Does this show up on here? Yeah, that's cool. All right. Let's keep going. So there is a strange duality in the human, which makes for an ethical paradox. We have definitions of good qualities and of bad, not changing things, but generally considered good and bad throughout the ages and throughout the species. Of the good, we think of always wisdom, tolerance, kindliness, generosity, humility, and the qualities of cruelty, greed, self-interest, graspingness, rhapsody are universally considered undesirable. And yet, in our structure of society, the so called and considered good qualities are invariable commitments, con, concomitants. Concomitants? How do you say that? Concomitant? What is this? Concomitant. She loved to travel with all its concomitant worries. Concomitant with his obsession with dirt was a desire for order, naturally accompanying or associated. Concomitant. The invariable concomitants of failures. Oh, you learned something new. Okay, that's cool. Of failures, while the bad ones are cornerstones of success. A man, a viewing point man, while he will love the abstract good qualities and detest the abstract bad, will nevertheless envy and admire the person who, through possessing the bad qualities has succeeded economically and socially, and will hold in contempt that person whose good qualities have caused failure. When such a viewing point man thinks of Jesus or St. Augustine or Socrates, he regards them with love because they are symbols of good he admires, and he hates the symbols of bad. But actually, he would rather be successful than good. In an animal other than man, we would replace the term good with weak survival quotient, and the term bad with strong survival quotient. Thus, man is thinking or reveres status, admires progression toward extinction. But in the unthinking stimulus which really activates him, he tends toward survival. Perhaps no other animal is not so torn between alternatives. Man might be described fairly adequately if simply as a two legged paradox. He has never become accustomed to the tragic miracle of consciousness. Perhaps, as has been suggested, his species is not set, has not gelled, but is still in a state of becoming, bound by his physical memories to a past of struggle and survival, limited in his futures by uneasiness of thought and consciousness. Back on the Western Flyer, Sparky cooked the tuna in a sauce of tomatoes and onions and spices, and we ate magnificently. Each rock turned over had not been heavy, but we had turned over many tons of rocks, and now the work with the animals had to go on, and the preservation and labeling. We rested and drank a little bit of beer, which in this condition of weariness is rest itself. While we were eating, a boat came alongside, and two Indians climbed aboard. Their clothing was better than that of a poor people of the day. They were, after all, within a day's canoe trip of La Paz, and some of the veneer of the city had struck them. Their clothing was patched and ragged, but at least not falling apart from decay. We asked Sparky and Tiny to bring them a little wine, and after two glasses, they became affable, making us think of the intolerance of the Indian for alcohol. Later, it developed that Sparky and Tiny had generously laced the wine with whiskey, which proved just the opposite about Indians' tolerance for alcohol. What? None of us could have drunk two tumblers, half whiskey and half wine, but these men did and became gay and companionable. They were barefoot and carried the iron harpoons of the region, and in the bottom of their canoe lay a huge fish. Their canoe was typical of the region and was interesting. There was no large trees in the southern part of the peninsula, hence all the canoes came from the mainland, most of them being made near Mazatlan. Mazatlan. They are double-edged canoes carved from a single log of light wood, braced inside with struts. Sometimes a small sail is set, but ordinarily they are padded swiftly by two men, one at either end. They are seaworthy and fast. The wood inside and out is covered with a thin layer of white and blue plaster, waterproof and very hard. This is made by the people themselves and applied regularly. It is not paint, but a hard shell-like plaster, and we cannot learn how it is made, although this is probably well known to the people around here. Equipped with one of these canoes, an iron harpoon, a pair of trousers, shirt, and hat, a young man is fairly well set up in life. In fact, the acquiring of the not of a canoe will probably give a young man so much security in his own eyes and make him so desirable in the eyes of others, he will promptly get married. It is said so often and in such ignorance that Mexicans are contented, happy people. They don't want anything. This, of course, is not a description of happiness of Mexicans, but of the unhappiness of the person who says it. For Americans and probably all northern people, all masses of wants growing out of their inner insecurity. The great drive of our people stems from insecurity. It is often considered that the violent interests in little games. Uh, God, that's just stupid. The men, mental rat mazes of contract bridge and the purposeful striking of little white balls with sticks comes from the inner sterility. Hold on, I gotta check something real quick. 'Cause I don't be- Hmm. Sorry, I'm distracted AF. Damn. Hmm. Oh well.
This game under control here.
Sorry, I'm watching basketball.
Foul on the
Sorry, that was stupid. Okay, let's lock in. But more likely it comes from an inner complication. Boredom arises not so often from too little to think about as too much, and none of it, nor clear nor simple. Bridge is a means of forgetting thousands of little irritations of a mind overcrowded with anarchy. For bridge has a purpose, that of taking as many tricks as possible. The end is clear and very simple, but nothing in the lives of bridge players is clean cut, and no ends are defined. And so they retire into some orderly process, even in a game, from the messy complication of their lives. It is possible that, although we do not know this, that the poor Mexican Indian is a little less messy in his living, having a baby, spearing fish, getting drunk, backing a political candidate. Each one of these is clear, free process, ending in a result. We have thought of this as in regard to the bribes one sometimes gives to Mexican officials. This is universally condemned by Americans, and yet it is simple, easy. It is a simple, easy process. A bargain is struck, a price is named, and money is paid. A graceful compliment exchange, the service performed, and it's over. He is not your man, nor you his. A little process has been terminated. It is rather like an old-fashioned buying and selling for cash or produce. We find we like this cash carry bribery is contrasted with our own system of credit. With us, no bargain is struck, no price named, and nothing is clear. We go to a friend who knows a judge. The friend goes to the judge. The judge knows a senator who has an ear for the awarder of contracts, and eventually we sell 5 carloads of lumber. But the process has only begun. Every member of the chain is tied to every other. 10 years later, the awarder of contracts must be appointed to Annapolis. The senator must have traffic tickets fixed for many years to come. The judge has a political leaning on your friend, and your friend's taxes. You're indefinitely indefinitely with friends who need jobs. It would be simpler and cheaper to go to the awarder for contracts, give him 1/4 of the price of the lumber, and get it over with. But that is dishonest. That is a bribe. Everyone in the credit chain eventually hates and fears everyone else, but the bribe bargain, having no enforcing mechanism, promotes mutual respect and a genuine liking. If the acceptor of a bribe cheats you, you will not go to him again, and he will soon have to leave the public service. But if he fulfills his contract, you have a new friend whom you can trust. Let's see. Oh, wait, let me charge my computer as well. Boom. We do not know whether Mexicans are happier than we. It is probable that they are exactly as happy. However, we do not know that the channel of their happiness or unhappiness are different from ours, just as their time sense is different. Just as their time sense is different. We can invade neither, but it is some game simply to know that it is so. As the men on our deck continued with what we thought was wine and probably considered some expensive foreign beverage, they uncovered a talent for speech we have so often noticed in these people. They are natural orators, filling their sentences with graceful forms, with smiles and elegant parallels. Oh, our oldest man delivered for us a beautiful political speech. He was an ardent admirer of General Almazan, who was then a candidate for the Mexican presidency. Our Indian likened the general to militarily to the god of war, but whether Mars or Huitzilopochtli, Huitzilopochtli, Aztec, I guess, he did not say. In physical beauty, the general stemmed from Apollo. Not he of the Belvedere, but an earlier sturdier of Apollo. In kindness and forethought, the wisdom of Almazan was rather above the lesser deities. Our man even touched on the general's abilities in bed, although how he knew he did not say. We gathered, though, that the general was known and well thought of in this respect by his total feminine constituency. He is a strong man, said our orator, holding himself firmly upright by the port stay. One of us interposed. When he is elected, there will be more fish in the sea for the poor people of Mexico. And the orator nodded wisely. That is so, my friend, he said. It was later that we learned that the general currently and the other candidate had many of the same beautiful qualities as General Almazan. And since he won, perhaps he had them more highly developed. For political virtues always triumph, and when two such colossi as these oppose each other, one can judge their relative excellences only by counting the vote. Oh, I just remembered something. Crazy, crazy. I'm sure it's fine. We had known that sooner or later we must develop an explanation for what we're doing with, which would be short and convincing. It couldn't be the truth because that wouldn't be convincing at all. How can you say to a people who are preoccupied with getting enough food and enough children that you have to come pick up useless little animals so that perhaps your world picture will be enlarged? That didn't even convince us, but there had to be a story for everyone to ask. One of us had taken a long walking trips through the southern United States. At first, um, he tried to explain that he did it because he liked to walk and because he saw and felt the country better this way. When he gave this explanation, there was unbelief and dislike for him. It sounded like a lie. Finally, a man said to him, "You can't fool me. You're doing it on a bet." And after that, he used this explanation, and everyone liked and understood him from then on. So, with these men, we developed our story and struck it to them thereafter. We were collecting curios. We said, these beautiful little animals and shells, while they abandoned so greatly here as to be valueless, had, because of their social scarcity in the United States, a certain value. They would not make us rich, but it was at least profitable to take them. And besides, we liked taking them. Once we had developed the story, we never had any more trouble. They all understood us and brought us what they thought were rare articles for the collection. They considered that we might get very rich. Thank heaven they do not know that when at last we come back to San Diego, the customs fixed a value on our thousands of picked animals of $5. Whoa. We hope these Indians never find out. We would go down steeply in our estimators. Our men went away finally a trifle intoxicated, but not forgetting to take an armload of empty tomato cans. They value tin cans very highly. It would not have done to sail to for La Paz harbor that night, for the pilot has short hours, and any boat calling for him out in his regular hours must pay double. But we wanted very much to get to La Paz. We were out of beer, and already the water in our tanks was stale tasting. It had seemed to us that it was stale when we put it in, and time did not improve it. It is likely that we would have died of thirst. The second or third day would undoubtedly had seen us drinking that unpleasant stuff. But there were other reasons why we longed for La Paz. Cape San Lucas had not really been a town, and our crew had convinced himself that it had been a very long time out of touch with civilization. In civilization, we think they included some items which, if anything, are attenuated in highly civilized groups. In addition, there is a genuine fascination of the city of La Paz. Everyone in the area knows the greatest of the La Paz. You can get anything in the world there, they say. It is a huge place, not, of course, so monstrous as Guamas or Mazatlan, but beautiful out of all comparison. The Indians paddle hundreds of miles to be at La Paz on feast day. It is a proud thing to have been born in La Paz, and a cloud of delight hangs over the distant city from the time when it was a great pearl center of the world. The robes of the robes of the Spanish kings and the stoles of bishops in Rome were stiff from the pearls of La Paz. There's a magic carpet sound to the name anyway, and it is an old city, as cities in the West are old and very venerable in the eyes of Indians of the Gulf. Guamas is busier, they say, and Mazatlan gayer, perhaps, than La Paz is Antigua. The Gulf and the Gulf ports have always been unfriendly to colonization. Again and again, attempts were made before settlement would stick. Humans are not much wanted on the peninsula. What is up with me today? Humans are not much wanted on the peninsula, but La Paz, the pearl oyster, drew men from all over the world, and as in all concentrations of natural wealth, the terror of greed were let loose in the city again and again. An event which happened at La Paz in recent years is typical of such places. An Indian boy by accident found a pearl of great size, and an unbelievable pearl. He knew its value was so great that he never needed to work again. In his one pearl, he had the ability to be drunk as long as he wished, to marry any number of girls, and to make many more a little a little happy too. In his great pearl lay salvation, for he could in advance purchase masses sufficient to pop him out of purgatory like a squeezed watermelon seed. In addition, he could shift a number of dead relatives a little nearer to paradise. He went to La Paz with this pearl in his hands and his future clear into eternity in his heart. He took his pearl to a broker and was offered so little that he grew angry, for he knew he was cheated. Then he carried his pearl to another broker and was offered the same amount. After a few more visits, he came to know that the brokers were only the many hands of one head, that he could not sell his pearl no more. He took it to the beach and hid under a stone, and that night he was clubbed into unconsciousness, and his clothing was searched. The next night he slept at the house of a friend, and his friend was and his friend and he were injured and bound, and the whole house searched. Then he went inland to lose the pursuers, and he was waylaid and tortured. But he was very angry now, and he knew what he must do. Hurt as he was crept back to La Paz in the night, and sculled he skulked like a hunted fox to the beach and took out his pearl from under the stone. Then he cursed it and threw it as far as he could into the channel. He was a free man again, with his soul in danger and his food and shelter insecure, and he laughed a great deal about it. This kind of sounds like The Pearl by John Steinbeck, but a little bit different. Because I don't think it got violent, but, similar stuff happened. Or like, I don't know. What was I finna do? There you go.
Look at Aiden, DeAndre.
Yeah, I'm just brain rotting for Rome. Damn.
What's your thing?
Damn, I forgot. Damn, I forgot. This seems to be a true story, but is so much like a parable that it almost can't be. This Indian boy is too heroic, too wise. He knows too much and acts on his knowledge. In every way, he goes contrary to human direction. The story is probably true, but we don't believe it. It is far too reasonable to be true. La Paz, the great city, was only a little way from us now. We could almost see its towers and smell its perfume. And it was right that it should be so hidden here out of the world, inaccessible except to the galleons of small boys' imaginations. While we were anchored at the Espiritu Santo Island, a black yacht went by swiftly, and on her a winged afterdeck ladies and gentlemen in white clothing sat comfortably. We saw they had tall, cool drinks beside them, and we hated them a little, for sure we were out of beer. For we were out of beer, okay. And Tiny said fiercely, "Nobody but a pansied sail on a thing like that." And then more gently, "But I've never been sure I ain't queer." Yeah. The yacht went down over the horizon, and up over the horizon climbed a old horror of a cargo ship, dirty and staggering. And she stumbled toward the channel of La Paz. Her pumps must have been going wide open. Later, at La Paz, we saw her very low in the water in the channel. We said to the man on the beach, "She is sinking," and he replied, "She always sinks." On the western flyer, vanity had set in. Clothing was washed unmercifully. The white tops of caps were laundered, and jeans washed and patted smoothly while we wet and hung from the stays to dry. Shoes were even polished, and the shaving and bathing were deafening. The sweet smell of unguents and hair oils, of deodorants and lotions filled the air. Hair was cut and combed. The mirror over the waist, the washstand behind the deck house was in constant use. We regarded ourselves in the mirror with the long, contemplative, coy looks like a chorus girl's about to go on stage. What we found was not good, but it was the best we had. Heaven knows what we expected to find in La Paz, but we wanted to be beautiful for it, like it. And in the morning, when we got underway, we washed the fish blood off the decks and put away the equipment. We coiled the lines in lovely spirals and washed all the dishes. It seemed to us we made a rather gallant show, and we hoped that no beautiful yacht was anchored in La Paz. If there was a yacht, we would be tough and seafaring, but if no such contrast was available, some of us at least proposed to be not a little jaunty. Even the least naive of us expected Spanish ladies in high combs and mantillas to be promenading along the beach. It would be rather like the opening scene of the Hollywood production of Life in Latin America, which dancers are in the foreground and cabaret tables upstaging from which we would rise a male chorus to sing, "I met my love in La Paz, satin and Latin she was." We assembled on top of the deck house. The coast pilot opened in front of us. Even Tony had succumbed. He wore a gaudy white seaman's cap with a gold ornament in front of it, which seemed to be a combination of field artillery and submarine service, except that it had an arrow pierced heart superimposed on it. Uh, we have so often admired the literary style and the quality of the coast pilot that it might be well here to quote from it. In the first place, the compilers of this book are cynical men. They know that they are writing for morons, that if by any effort their description can be misinterpreted or misunderstood by the reader, that effort will be made. These writers have a contempt for almost everything. They would be like an ocean and a coastline unchanging and unchanging, lights and buoys that do not rest and wash away, winds and storms that come at specified times, and finally reasonably intelligent men to read their instructions. They are gratified in none of these desires. They try to write calmly and objectively, but now with Mexican lights, buoys, and port facilities, the following quotation from the HO number 84 sailing directions for west coast of Mexico and Central America 1937, corrections to January 1940, page 125 under La Paz Harbor. La Paz Harbor is that portion of La Paz Channel between the eastern end and Lamogue, Lamogue of El Magote, I don't know, Magoti. and the shore in the vicinity of La Paz. Limagodi is a low, sandy, bush-covered peninsula about 6 miles long, east and west, and 1.5 miles wide at its widest part. The form that forms the northern side of the Essendia de Anape, a large lagoon. This lagoon lies in the low plain that is covered with a thick growth of trees, bushes, and cacti. The waters shoal over the great part of the lagoon, but a channel in which there are depths of 2 to 4 fathoms leads from La Paz Harbor to its northern western part. Oh, well, this is just, yeah, okay. You can call it there, bro. I am fumbling like crazy right now. Yeah, okay, bye.